What game is better than Splendor, better than Seven Wonders, and what game does it compete against? Well, today on Rest and Reason, we're going to be going over Furnace with the Interbellum expansion and Mons and Mages to see how these games are better than Seven Wonders and Splendor, but also to see which one of these two you should buy. So, let's get right into why all of these games are similar. First off, they're all Euro games. Now, Euro games, as I pointed out before, are kind of a mix between interaction and your own strategy being what's in control of the game. And luck is a pretty low factor. Not a completely non-existent factor. All of these games have luck, but they do not have very much luck. It's not a main part of the game. Now, these are also both Tableau Builders, and specifically, Tableau Builders are a subset of Engine Builder. They're a simplified version of Engine Builder. But what I really like about these two, as opposed to Splendor and Seven Wonders, is that these two games are Engine Builders through and through. They have very little feel of that Tableau Builder where it feels like somebody took something really strong and beautiful and wonderful, like a really good garlic, and really brought it down to make it less potent so people would enjoy it more, quotation marks. But people who like garlic are like, well, where's the garlic? These are exactly like that, where you're just like, I get all of that garlic flavor, and I don't feel like I lose any of it like Seven Wonders and Splendor does. Now, what's the main feel of these games? Well, this game is you're in charge of a company. You're managing that company either in the 1800s or in the 1900s with the expansion. Now, in Mons and Mages, you are managing a Pokemon team. Now, it's not technically called Pokemon, so there's no, infraction of copyright or anything like that, but it's very clearly based on the idea of Pokemon. But in a really interesting and fun way. You're not going to be playing this and thinking, oh man, why aren't these Pokemon? You're going to be going, oh, these are a lot of my favorite parts of Pokemon, but done in a way that's actually fun for gamers. Now, I will point out, though, this is the management side of that. So if you're looking for the combat side, go find a different game. This is more about how you manage your team of Pokemons to create the ultimate powerful team in the tournament. Now, if you're enjoying this content, make sure to hit that subscribe button and keep watching. So now we're going to get into the comparison, and we're going to start with the main mechanic of tableau building. Now, first off, Splendor and Seven Wonders both have tableau building that feels very low on its engine building. And I've already mentioned this before, so I'm not going to go too into depth, but basically they just feel like engine building light, and that actually ruins the game on the mechanical side, in my opinion. Now, these games do not fall into that same problem. First off, we have Furnace, which is an actual tableau building game that feels like a real engine. And I'm going to go ahead and show you on the table how all three of these games have that same feel. So Furnace is a tableau engine builder that first off starts out with, do I want to bid in a way where I can get the card, and this is a card I need, so I'll get it and have it the rest of the game, or am I going to lose the card and get the bonus at the top? Now, this makes for a very interesting puzzle when it comes to the bidding. And so you'll either get, for example, in this case, you get 6 coal at this very moment, right away, or you'll get 12 coal throughout the game once you've upgraded this. So it's that constant tension of which cards to get and which cards to take advantage of the top. But on top of that, once you know which cards are going to be in front of you, let's say you bought this card and you now own all of these cards, then it's a question of when are you going to use these cards. So in this case, if I use this card after this card, I wouldn't have all of these coals that I need to turn into these steals. That makes for a really interesting puzzle because you have to make sure when you have a bunch of cards in front of you that you have the right ones fire at the right time. This all leads to a very interesting and true engine building feel. Now, with the expansion, you have a few extra additions to this original puzzle. First off, in the bidding, you have this new special bidder that allows you to bid extra based off of coal that you use. So in this case, you'd be able to bid an extra 2, so you turn it over to its 2 side, which I am not very good at apparently. And so you turn it right over to that 2, and you'd get to use this as an extra bid. And it adds a little bit more unpredictability and makes the player interactions a little more interesting. Then you add these schools where you could also bid on them, and one of these, you could do one or both of these top bonuses instead of just one of them. And that's a little bit more interesting and gives you a little bit more solid of a place to get, for example, coal in this case. Finally, to add to the when and which question, you now have a who, because you have managers that you can put underneath each company, and you can have one manager per company. And these managers allow you to get extra bonuses from that company. So now you're asking not just which cards and when to play them, but who to play them with. And that adds an extra crunch to this game. However, the expansion I personally wouldn't recommend buying for its crunchiness, but more for its 5th player, because I would recommend a different game for crunchy Tableau engine building, and that game is Mons and Mages. So, Mons and Mages has a very similar feel. Now, it does have a simple market system, which is a little bit easier than the whole bidding system that you have in Furnace. But what makes this game really crunchy is how much these different monsters can do, and the fact that there are, I believe, in the original game, in a basic multiplayer game, you are going to have no repeat monsters. So every single monster is different. They have beginning bonuses when you first buy them. Well, technically when you first catch them. You have bonuses that trigger whenever you move this little pawn thing and put mana. And then that can trigger more mons, who can then trigger more things. You could have a whole cascade, a classic engine building, synergizing extravaganza of amazing fun. And it's just such a meaty and heavy puzzle. There's so much to each of these cards, which makes this game a little bit less accessible, but makes it very crunchy and delicious for being such a small box. So much crunch. The other thing that's really interesting about this game is it does a reverse scoring system. So normally in a normal game you'd go up 5 points, and that means relative to everybody else you now have 5 more points. This game says, what if we did that but we turned it around? Instead, everybody else will lose 5 points and you'll stay at the original number of points you had. This is very thematic and an interesting puzzle because you have to think about it very differently. Also, the game ends when all other players have reached 0, so it adds a little bit of an Ameritrash feel, but don't get me wrong, this is still a very clear engine builder. So, now that I've looked at how they're all Tableau builders, I'm going to go ahead and look at their themes and compare their themes. So, Splendor and Seven Wonders, their themes are painted on at best. With Splendor, they're not even painted on well. It doesn't feel at all like the game it's supposed to, and the art really doesn't help you understand anything about anything. Honestly, I've forgotten a lot of times what this game is even about. I only know it because as a reviewer, I found it so ridiculous that it was 15th century jewelers in Venice that I now remember it just because of how ridiculously not that it is. With Seven Wonders, the paint job's a little better. It looks like a game about civilization, but it's not a game about civilization. You don't feel like you're building a civilization on any level. You're building this vague, abstract group of cards that have paintings that make you think it's thematic. But deep down, you know it's not. You can feel it. These two games are definitely better at their theme. First off, Furnace with the Interbellum expansion is actually slightly less thematic than Furnace without the Interbellum expansion. And that comes down primarily to the business schools. The business schools expansion just feels a little bit hazy on theme. And the other reason why Furnace isn't a perfect score in theme is because they could have put on these cards little names of what these companies are, so that I understand as the player why they're doing what they're doing, but instead you just get this picture, and you kind of have to just guess why this one has you selling steel. You're not quite sure, it doesn't make sense. Whereas if they could have just put like a car manufacturer on that or something like that, you would know immediately, oh, they're turning steel into something somebody would buy. That makes sense. And then you'd feel better about how the theme of the game goes. But all around, it does really feel like you're managing a bunch of different companies, you're investing in a bunch of companies that are giving you resources back for your investment, and you're using all of that to get rich in the time periods that these two games take place in. And so it does feel pretty thematic, especially compared to Splendor and Seven Wonders. Now, Mons and Mages is the most thematic of the bunch. It does have small areas where it's not thematic, but it really does a good job of evincing what it would feel like to actually be a wizard in charge of a large team of monsters who are fighting for you in a tournament. It wouldn't be easy. It wouldn't be something that you could just, oh, like, I choose you and throw out a ball and like, oh yeah. It would be a highly curated team where you're working together, all the powers all at once, to maximize the amount of damage and protection and healing that you get against other monsters and teams to then eventually gain victory. So thematically, like I said, this would be the top, but let's go ahead and summarize, because you might be wondering, okay, which one of these two do you prefer? Because you've said positive and negative about both of them for the most part. Well, ultimately, it all comes down to the scores. I give Splendor a 3.02 out of 5. And it's really a game that I would only recommend for people who really love the genre of Tableau engine building. If you really love the genre, this game will come off your shelf a lot because people really get into the tiles. To be honest, it's just the poker chip tiles that really make people love this game. But it will get on your table a lot, and it gives you some level of crunch as opposed to some other party games. Seven Wonders is a 3.48 out of 5. Still a game I wouldn't recommend for most people. I would say this is the ultimate game for if you have a big group of people and you don't want something that's purely dumb. It will play up to 7 players, and with expansions, it will play with even more players. And so I would say Seven Wonders is pretty good for that kind of a case. Furnace is where I start getting into a place where I can actually start recommending the game to a wider audience. Furnace gets a 3.66 out of 5. And that is a game that I would say almost anybody could buy this game and enjoy it. I would say that it is especially good if you're looking for a game that's simple enough that you could really show it to any well-thinking adult or anybody who enjoys thinking, because I would say somebody who doesn't enjoy thinking might not enjoy this game as much as you, but anybody who enjoys thinking even a little bit will probably have a decent amount of fun with Furnace. It's easy, it's accessible. When you add the expansion, it makes the game crunchier, but I honestly wouldn't recommend buying the expansion to make this game crunchier. I would actually recommend that you buy Mons and Mages if you do that. And the reason is simple. This game with the expansion is a 3.69 out of 5, which is only 0.03 points more than the original game. And all of those points comes from the fact that this has 5 players and this has 4 players. Really, buying this expansion for me was most useful to have more players for Furnace, which is definitely actually a good thing. But if you're looking for a crunchier game, I would recommend that you go with Mons and Mages. This game gets a 4.03 out of 5, which means it gets a golden recliner. And that means that I would recommend this to just about anybody with a collection. Now, this is a rare case where usually my golden recliners go to games that are more accessible than their opponents in their same genre. And this time, Furnace is more accessible than Mons and Mages. So I do give the caveat, although I would say that this would go in just about any collection, and just about everybody should go out and at least try this game, probably buy it. I would say it takes a whole game of this to have really any idea what's going on, and by your second game, you're really starting to feel solid. This game, I feel like most people could get it in their first game, probably halfway through their first game, probably on their first turn of their first game, they start understanding, oh, this is how the game works. And so This is the game you're going to take out just a smidge more, but this is the game that's going to give you the feeling and the gameplay that you really want. That engine building that's easy for people to get into because of this fun, gorgeous art that's really exciting, and these monsters that feel like Pokemon. That's just going to grab people more. But if you have an audience of lighter game players, you might want to go with Furnace, because it will be the one that they will go into and go, okay, I see how gritty this looks. I'm ready for it. Whereas if they go into this one, they're going to come out going, oh no, I didn't realize this was such a crunchy game. I thought this would be simple and about Pokemon and throwing stuff out. This is hard. So that's my caveat, but like I said, give this a golden recliner. I cannot recommend, honestly, any of these games enough. I was really shocked. I got these two games completely unrelated from their publishers. They both sent me free copies to review. I didn't think they had anything to do with each other. I wasn't planning on comparing them. I actually taped my video for this one and its expansion, but then when I played this, I realized how similar they were and how much I wanted to talk about both of these together. Now, as you can see, this one has fallen and this one has won. Ultimately, there are only two games standing here, the original Furnace and the Mons and Mages. Those are the ones I recommend. This for if you have people who are wanting that little bit simpler of a game and you know exactly what you're getting into. And this one, if you want to try to get people into a game that maybe is a little above their level, but they're gonna love it once they get to play it, once they get to feel it, I think they really will enjoy it if they don't just outright love it. So thank you so much for joining us today. Make sure to hit that subscribe button, ring that notification bell, hit that like button, and join us next time on Rest and Reason.